President Buhari to leave for Saudi Arabia today to attract further investments to Nigeria.
Flooding in Adamawa State with more than 100 villages submerged in 9 local government areas and Yola, the state capital.
Nigerian Air Force to conduct counter-terrorism simulation exercise along Kaduna-Birnin-Gwari Road today, urges public not to panic.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall review President Buhari's visit to Russia, plus Nigeria's foreign policy, the new perspective.
Indeed, a new vista of diplomatic relations between Nigeria and Russia has been opened up with the 4-day visit of President Muhammadu Buhari to the Russian Federation last week for the Russia-Africa Summit, which held in Sochi, Russia from October 23rd to 25th.
You're right, Kirian. It was the first such Russia-Africa summit with representatives of Africa's 54 countries in attendance, including 43 heads of state and government. Of course, President Muhammadu Buhari led Nigeria's delegation to the summit and was quite outstanding considering Nigeria's leadership status on the continent, plus long-standing ties with Russia.
That's correct, Kinsley. Recall that diplomatic relations between Nigeria and the old Soviet Union, which is now called the Russian Federation, dates back to 1960. And during the Nigerian Civil War, the then Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, as it were, USSR provided the political and the military assistance to the Nigerian government.
And still on the course of history, Kirian, Nigeria and the newly formed Russian Federation re-established relations in March 2001. Of course, that followed the dissolution of the USSR. In 2001, when President Obasanjo visited Moscow to strengthen the partnerships between Nigeria and Russia. Now, 8 years later, in 2009, the then Russian President Dmitry Medvedev became the first Russian leader to touch Nigerian soil when he visited the country as part of a 3-nation tour of the African continent.
And that reminds us also of the days of Gorbachev,
of course,
the man who was in power when the Perestroika and Glasnost, took place.
Of course, yes. That's right. But that was in the days of the USSR.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, it collapsed following the disintegration of the socialist system.
Yeah. Now, back to the recently concluded summit in Sochi, Russia. There was an avalanche of greater prospects in Nigeria-Russia relations as President Buhari and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin brokered several deals for both countries, deals that cut across the sectors of security, education, mines and steel development, oil and gas as well, trade and investment, and of course agriculture.
Exactly, Kirian. And specifically the summit, as well as of course the negotiations on the sidelines of the summit, provided some ray of hope for the resuscitation of the moribund Ajaokuta Steel Company, which has got well over $5 billion in 4 decades and still not functioning. But this time around, the Russians, we are told, have agreed to partner with the Nigerian government to return and complete the Ajaokuta Steel Complex, which they started in 1979 and is, of course, believed to be the bedrock of Nigeria's industrialization efforts.
Yeah, well, that didn't happen along the line, but let's see what this new vista of hope will bring. Well, it's a ray of hope, Kinsley. Another cheering fallout of the Sochi summit was the Memorandum of Understanding between the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, and Russia's Lukoil company to revamp Nigeria's ailing refineries. Lukoil company, by the way, we are told owns 7 refineries with a record turnover of $38 billion.
That's some huge capacity, no doubt about that. And of course, security also was dominant in the talks between President Buhari and his Russian counterpart, President Putin. And Russia's military might is widely acclaimed, and President Muhammadu Buhari got a deal for the upgrade and timely delivery of the remaining 7 of the existing order for 12 attack helicopters, which Nigeria badly needs. to deal decisively with terrorism, banditry, and other forms of criminality in the country.
And then because of the program, we'll be able to know whether such helicopters will involve helicopter gunships, what they call the B-52 helicopter bombers, which are very, very effective, in any kind of war.
The Russians don't manufacture B-52. That's the American, it's an American product, yes.
But they have another version of it.
Yeah, but that's for an all-out war, by the way. That's because, yes.
Now, on agriculture, President Buhari particularly requested Russia's support to Nigeria in wheat production, as Russia is said to have become the world's largest producer of wheat. And in the area of transportation, one of Russia's leading rail line service providers, Medprom, indicated interest in undertaking the 1,400-kilometer Lagos-Calabar rail track that will pass through all the states in the south sub-region.
That's right. Now, some analysts on foreign relations are arguing that Russia's latest interest in Africa is largely driven by its own national interest. But be that as it may, Nigeria obviously stands at a vantage position to gain from the series of agreements that were reached in Sochi. But how can those agreements ultimately be crystallized? What therefore will be the role of implementation of the agreements? And of course, we shall be taking a look at other aspects of Nigeria-Russia relation, especially Nigeria's quest for industrialization. Now, these are the perspectives that we will have with regard to the outcome of the Russian-African summit that took place last week in Sochi, Russia, with President Muhammadu Buhari in attendance. Our guest, of course, will join us in our conversation segment of the program. My name is Kingsley Osadolo. I welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria, another wet morning here in Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory. Kirian, we're just wondering, is this June or July?
Well, climate change is is there for us to see. And I am Kirian Umayo. Thank you for joining us for a fresh edition of the program Good Morning Nigeria for Monday. Now we are broadcasting live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And just to let you know, we shall have a second conversation on the program, and that will be on Nigeria's foreign policy with some members of the Association of Retired Career Ambassadors of Nigeria. As usual, we'll also bring you our complimentary segments. For now, let's join Nolene Abel Amer for the morning news. Hello, Nolene.
Hi, Kieran. Good morning to you and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the early morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari will depart Abuja later today for Riyadh, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, to attend the third edition of the Future Investment Initiative, organized by Saudi's Public Investment Fund, which holds from October 29 through 31. A statement by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, says the three-day event will focus on three key pillars of sustainable future: technology for good and advanced society. The statement adds that given the increased investor confidence in Nigeria's economy, President Buhari will use the occasion to speak about the economic opportunities that abound in Nigeria, the effectiveness of his administration's policies to improve the business environment and invite investors to the country. The president will be accompanied by Governor Babagana Zulum of Borno State, Abubakar Bagudu of Kebbi State, and Aminu Bello Masari of Katsina State, as well as some ministers and heads of government agencies. After the investors' conference in Riyadh, President Buhari will proceed to Mecca, accompanied by close personal aides, to perform the Umrah Lesser pilgrimage before returning to Abuja. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, the governors of Lagos, Oyo and Osun states, as well as some notable Nigerians, were honored by the Alumni Association of the University of Lagos over the weekend. The event climaxed the activities marking the association's Golden Jubilee with the theme, Driving Nigeria's Sustainable Development Agenda.
What the future calls for is for us to dedicate ourselves to the service of this great institution, to ensure that this great institution becomes greater and greater still, and to the service of our country.
Now, on politics, the Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has called on the people of Kogi State to sustain the dividend of democracy by voting massively to return Governor Yahaya Bello to Lugard House on November 16th. Vice President Osinbajo was speaking at the official flag-off of the All Progressives Congress APC campaign at Ida.
Solving the problem. Kogi is ready for the next level. We are finished with preliminary. We are finished with primary. It is now time to go to the next level.
And on security, the Nigerian Air Force will conduct a simulation exercise on counter-terrorism codenamed Exercise Nazo along the Kaduna-Birnin Gwari route today, the 28th of October, 2019. A statement by Director of Public Relations and Information, Nigerian Air Force Air Commodore Ibikunle Daramola, notifies the public, especially residents of Birnin Gwari, Afaka and environs, that there will be movement of military aircraft, vehicles, equipments, personnel, as well as firing of live ammunitions during the period of the routine military exercise. In addition, there will be restriction of vehicular movement at Kaduna-Birnin Gwari route during the exercise. Members of the public are advised not to panic, but to go about their normal businesses, as the Nigerian Air Force will endeavor to minimize disruptions to normal activities. In what appears to be release of water from Lagdo Dam in Cameroon Republic, more than 100 villages in 9 local government areas of Adamawa State are reported to have been submerged. Report says Yola, the state's capital, is not left out, as the flood claims lives and rendered many residents homeless.
We don't have option where to go, so that we are living here up to 40 to 30 years in this area. We born here, we built our home here, houses here, then we didn't get anywhere to live.
And on foreign scene, the Islamic State leader Abu Bakr Baghdadi has been killed by U.S. Special Forces in a raid on his Syrian safe home, Donald Trump announced on Sunday, ending a year-long manhunt for one of the world's most wanted terrorists. Trump said the impeccable operation was conducted on Saturday night in the province of Idlib, one of the last areas of the country still outside Syrian regime control, and that U.S. officials had confirmed Baghdadi, 48, was among those killed. And those are the news highlights for now. The program continues with Kieran and Kinsley after this break. I am Nolin Ebel Ame. Good morning.
One quality sound. Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
The new edition of TV Guide is out, exclusively taking a look at the traditional television and new media. Are they comparable or complementary? Media industry players give perspective on the trends, progress, challenges, and the way forward. Find out on this compelling edition of TV Guide. Expository interviews with stars of the team within our space. Becky Madojemo of NTA, Utibe Umore of AIT, Nifemi Oguntai of TVC, and a host of others. TV Guide, your indispensable companion. Also feature Iya Modina.
I'm the CEO, Managing Director of Iya Modina Sister Restaurant. I choose to serve. Shut up your mouth. Let me finish.
A TV drama series on NTA. Let's get to meet the characters behind Iya Modina. This edition also presents exciting features on tourism, culture, entertainment, sports, health, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendors near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Nigeria Diaspora Investment Summit 2019 holds on the 6th to the 8th of November 2019. The summit will take place at the Banquet Hall Presidential Villa, Abuja, Nigeria. Theme: leveraging diaspora resources for economic growth. Sectors: agribusiness, education, training, healthcare, entertainment, sports, hospitality and tourism, infrastructure and real estate, manufacturing, extractive industries, telecommunications, technology and innovation, waste management and environmental remediation, transportation. For registration, visit www.ndis.gov.ng. For participation and sponsorship, please call 090-177-77008, 0817-2244-660. Convened by the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission.
The Aerial Assurance Challenge.
Oh, thank you. But what assurance can you give our daughter?
Everything. With the new look Aerial, I can even do the laundry.
Prove it then.
Okay. Let's make this stain even tougher. Now, let's wash the cloth with your detergent and with new look Aerial. Do you believe me now?
Aerial, now in a new look pack.
History was made in Africa with the birth of the first television station, WNTV, in Ibadan, Nigeria, on October 31, 1959.
I have great pleasure in formally launching Western Nigeria television first in Africa.
Television in Africa clocked 60 this year. It's time to celebrate this remarkable achievement. Various activities are lined up: photo exhibition, a colloquium, public presentation of broadcasting books, and a gala night. Be part of these events, powered by Foundation for Ibadan Television Anniversary Celebrations, FITAC,
and supported by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
An award that has succeeded to pool a galaxy of stars from the north, south, east to the west, and central Africa, and also those that are domiciled beyond the shores of Africa under one roof.
One quality sound. Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Up next for us, we'll take a review of some of today's newspapers.
Bayo Atoyebe has just joined us for the review of today's national dailies as usual. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Gideon. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley.
All right,
good morning,
Bayo,
Nigeria.
Good to see you. I hope you had a pleasant weekend.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, let's start with the Daily Sun newspaper for this Monday. Just by the right-hand side of the nameplate, to have National Assembly determined to bring change. That says Lawan. Lawan, of course, is the Senate President, with a rider, Reps Minority Caucus insists on thorough scrutiny of 2020 budget. The lead story this morning is on the presidential election suit. It's a controversy as Supreme Court panel hears Atiku PDP's appeal. Apex Court schedules case Wednesday, begins fresh hearing of HDP's case against Buhari's election. And just below the photograph, on the front page of the Daily Sun, we have ASU threatens strike over federal government's insistence on IPPIS, as on page 39. Pastor Bakare attacks Tinubu. You must give account, he tells ex-Lagos governor. The story is on page 6. And our exit of 109 companies on Seattle's capital market. On pages 21 and 22 is where you get that story. Wife of Tafawa Balewa Jumei dies. It's on page 11.
Okay, we'll take a look at the Blueprint newspaper. Blueprint, immediately below the nameplate, you also have the story on ASU and IPPIS with the headline, Federal Government Plans to Ambush and Force Us into IPPIS. That's according to ASU. The story starts there on the front page with a continuation on page 6. Now, 49 emails registered for 2019 NECO in Ogun. Details on page 17. Border closure, that's the kicker. Don't succumb to pressure. Remand tells federal government. Remand stands for Rice Millers Association of Nigeria. Details of the story can be found on page 38. Nigeria exported solid minerals worth 77.23 billion naira in 2017. That's attributed to Nati. Gas, future of the nation. That's the writer to that story. Now, that's the photograph on the front page of the Blueprint has the caption, residents resort to using canoes for movement as a result of flooding at Ngoa Tana in Jimeta Town in Yola North Local Government area of Adamawa State. That was yesterday. You already saw part of that also in our news bulletin earlier, following the flooding reported in several local government areas of Adamawa State. Buhari's Russian trip, antidote for PDP's 16-year misrule. That story is on page 9. New Moon, Sultan asks Muslims to look out for Rabi al-Awwal on Monday. Rabi al-Awwal on Monday, details on page 6. Ogun doctor, that is in quotes, kills mother of 4 during abortion. That's page 8. U.S. Special Forces kill ISIS leader Baghdadi in raid. That's page 39. Buhari off to Saudi Arabia today for Lesser Hajj and Business Conference, page 5.
Okay. Let's start from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is to hear the appeal by the People's Democratic Party and Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, its presidential candidate, on Wednesday, 30th of October. The appeal was filed on September 24th against the ruling of the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal, which was delivered on September 11th. The People's Democratic Party and candidate Atiku Abubakar had filed 6 appeals and also provided 66 grounds upon which is challenging the returning of President Muhammadu Buhari as president duly elected in the February 23 election. There are 4 interlocutory appeals and also 1 main appeal against the judgment. However, the papers are reporting about controversy. The Daily Trust also report that the Apex Court has not named the panel of judges. The People's Democratic Party, it may be recalled, the caucus in the House of Representatives had demanded that the 7 most senior judges should be named as panelists to sit over the case. However, a lawyer had told the leadership that the PDP House of Representatives caucus demand is primitive and has no basis in law. He says that there are no junior or senior Supreme Court justices. Only the best and cerebral heads make it up to the Supreme Court. The leadership also quotes another source close to the Apex Court as saying that the Chief Justice of Nigeria could give the case to 10 or more or all the justices to study. The Chief Justice will then appoint any 7 of the 16 to be a member of the panel. He also asks that justices to sit on a particular appeal don't know they will sit on it. Furthermore, they also don't know other justices on the panel prior to the day of the hearing of the appeal. The Chief Justice tries such measures to avoid collusion or collaboration. After lawyers have finished all their arguments and presentations, the panel of justices normally will sit in the conference and every member will share what they feel about the facts, the issues, and the law as regarding the appeal. It is such an atmosphere of submissions that form the decisions of the appeal court. This is why the apex court will hear and sometimes give judgment on the same day. And it will later give a date where it will advance reasons for it. And they cite 2 cases as an example, Amechi versus Omehia and Nyesom Wike versus Dako Kupita side. The hearing and the judgment were on the same day, and the court will later on give ruling. Now, this is coming at the heat of what the NJC did. Lawyers have also renewed their appeal and agitation for representation as appointment to the Supreme Court benches. This followed the NJC recommendation of 4 Court of Appeal justices to be elevated to the Supreme Court. The Nigerian Bar Association had also recommended 9 lawyers, 6 of them senior advocate of Nigeria, to be appointed to as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And they sent in this since February 9, 2017. The basis is as revised in the 2014 NJC guideline and procedure regarding the rules. The 4 justices that were named a while ago by the recommended by the NJC to the President for confirmation are Justices Adamu Joro, Emmanuel Agim, C. Oseji, and Helen Ogumuiju. There were also other appointments for the heads of courts. This include Justice Soho, who is a head Chief Judge of the Federal High Court, Justice B.B. Kanyip, President National Industrial Courts, and the elevation of Justice Eunice Alade to the Court of Appeal. The NJC also recommended Justices Esther Edim as Chief Judge of Edo and the new judicial officer for 9 other states. So the President and the governors will confirm them the appointment by NJC.
Well, Bayo, we are still on the issue of the judiciary and therefore justice. We didn't have your presence on Friday. Well, there was a story, this story that had been running for some 3 years of a member of staff of Chrisland School in Lagos who defiled a pupil, who was under 3 years in the school and therefore was put on trial. The decision was given last week, and he was sentenced to 60 years in jail.
Yeah, that's good.
He's 40-something years old and sentenced to 60 years in jail.
That is a very good example. If a pupil is put in a school, a teacher in a school assumes the role of a parent. For you now to descend to defiling such people is unacceptable. It's just like a father. It's almost like an incest because the trust given to a teacher in the school is equivalent to the trust of a parent.
It is a good judgment, a very great one indeed. But you talk about this ASU threatening the nationwide strike once again.
Okay, ASU is to meet with the Senate President and the Speaker of the House of Representatives today. In fact, the time for it is 11 o'clock. And again, it is against the opposition to the integrated payroll and personal information system. The President of the Academic Staff Union, that is Professor, the ASU President, what's that his name again?
Professor, I remember.
I thought you were reminding me.
I had some distraction.
Biodun Ogundipe. Yeah. He says that he's to lead the ASU team. But which are the issues? ASU says that IPIS is a one-size-fits of all agencies, particularly, and is akin to the public service. It is tainted with corruption, and therefore it does not suit the system in the university. Professor Adejumo of the Southwest Caucus of the ASU from Ibadan says civil service nature of IPs makes it illegal and administrative bottleneck for the universities. It says it is contrary to the Public Universities Autonomy under Universities Miscellaneous Provision Act of 2003. And he is also arguing that that act provides that the laws and statutes that establish university allows them to have statutes and university system that does not apply as required in the public service. And in other words, the system established by that law for university recognize the retirement age for academic staff as 70 years, not 60 years as in public service. The IPs is a rigid system and does not take care of the sacred areas of concern by university. And he lists this, and this include areas of replacement, recruitment of academic staff, mobility of academic personnel for visiting, and as well as adjunct to part-time and sabbatical concerns. However, the Minister of Finance says that ASU's opposition to IPs is misplaced. He says no agency of government must resist it. He says yes, universities and some medical institutions have peculiarities. However, the medical officer or public service can also consult in different hospitals, but he is still on one primary point of payment. And for the universities, he said a lecturer on approval can lecture in more than one university, but it does not mean he will feature in the payroll of all the universities. The allowances they earn in regards to this are all provided for in the IPs, and IPs is useful and has saved Nigeria 250 billion. The Accountant General of the Federation sums it up. He says the position of ASU to IPs is an endorsement of corruption.
See, I also want to think that IPPS, yes, is a healthy development for this country. But I could also devise another platform. It's still within the IPPS, arrangement that could accommodate all those, complaints, raised by ASU. But they need to fall in line with a checkmated arrangement. You don't just have to operate in a system where you're not controlled. You're not nobody knows what you're doing, especially when it comes to finances. So they need to be checkmated, as a matter of fact, and devise other means of including all those areas of peculiarities, in the universities.
You see, when controversies like this arise, usually you have the parties talking at each other. They don't listen to one another. If you listen critically to the explanation provided by the Office of the Minister of Finance and the Accountant General of the Federation, they say that they have identified the peculiarities of the university. They will not tamper with the autonomy of the accounting department of the university. However, it has to come under IPs, and it will accommodate all the peculiarities of the university. So,
okay.
What is the basis for the objection?
I have made my comments on this in the past. Now, if ASU is saying that the IPPIS is not suitable for them, they have accountants who are their members. Let them design their own template, and then let the federal government see that template and then absorb it into IPPIS. Well, design it's payment arbitrary in the university. Today you just wake up, Kiran will get this one. Tomorrow Kingsley will get this one. There must be a template. So what is that template? It must be standardized. Exactly. It is not arbitrary. All right, let's take our editorial. It's coming from Nigerian Pilot. It's at page 3. Very briefly, renewable fee by NIMSI, unacceptable. That's the Identity Management Commission. It says that the subterranean plot by NIMSI to charge 5,000 naira for renewal of national identity card is not only misplaced, exploitative and illegal, but unacceptable by the masses. It says that NIMSI is drifting from its legitimate mandate at the detriment of Nigerians who have to wait for over 3 years after being captured to get their national identity card issued to them. This card that is taking NIMSI 3 years to issue is the equivalent of ATM cards, which banks issue to their customers within hours, and driver's license that road safety issues within a few months. Bayo, that's all. We have 2 topics. We'll see you again tomorrow so that we'll take a look at it. The editorial is Reps Issa Loquitur. It speaks for itself. See you tomorrow, Bayo.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria, still on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll get ahead with our conversation segment.
Want quality sound? Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
They are there at the crack of dawn. They are there busy preparing while we rise for our day. They are there silently, guarding, waiting, listening, and watching. They are there ready in the sky above and the waters below, in the blistering heat of the day, in the dead of night, willing, indefatigable, determined in the defense of the sovereignty of our country. They are our first line of defense and our last. They who have paid the ultimate price in defending us. They are fathers and uncles. They are mothers and sisters and girlfriends and boyfriends. They are brothers and cousins and best friends and neighbors. They are classmates, colleagues, and citizens of this nation. They are our defenders and deserve our respect, our prayers, our thoughts. Nigeria, please support our armed forces.
The NTA and the Village Headmaster family are pleased to announce the commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the award-winning Village Headmaster television series. Monday, 28 October 2019, command performances of the Village Headmaster at the Terraculture Arena, Victoria Island, Lagos. Red carpet, 5 p.m. and live performance, 6 p.m. Tuesday, 29 October 2019, at 10 a.m. Roundtable discussion at Freedom Park, Broad Street, Lagos. Theme: Drama, a tool for national development. Chief host Alhaji Lai Mohammed, Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, supported by the Director General of the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Malam Yakubu Ibn Mohammed. Join the NTA and the Village Headmaster family as we celebrate this Golden Jubilee. Attendance at both events is strictly by invitation. Announcer, Organizing Committee.
Want quality sound? Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now to our first topic for discussion this morning, which is on Nigeria's foreign policy trends and prospects. We have with us in the studios some former career ambassadors who are members of the Association of Retired Career Ambassadors of Nigeria, ARCAN. I would like to welcome three of them to our studios. First, Ambassador Chudi Okafor, who was Nigeria's envoy to Thailand and Burma.
Thank you.
Excellency, a pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Thank you.
Also here with us in the studios, would like to welcome Ambassador Grant Ehiobuche, as former Nigeria's envoy to Congo Democratic Republic, and he is the Deputy Publicity Secretary of the Association of ARCAN, that is Retired Career Ambassadors.
All right, and also with us this morning is Ambassador Christy Mbono, former head of Nigeria's permanent mission to Africa, South American Cooperation Forum, and one of Nigeria's very few female ambassadors. So we're glad to have you this morning on this show.
Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, gentlemen and lady, no doubt the fact that you are very experienced ambassadors and those who have represented Nigeria at different fora across the globe. So now let's look at Nigeria's foreign policy. Of course, when it was put together, it centers on Africa. You know, is it still the same, or has there been any other development with respect to the focus of Nigerian foreign policy? Let's begin with Bono.
It has always been Africa-centered, but recently there is a new trajectory. You know, we still have to deal with our neighbors, even though many of them are not happy with the closure of the border, because we have to look inwards. We have to look at our national interest, because foreign policy actually is all about your national interest. You know, we still deal with them, but the truth is that there is a little deviation now, you know. We have to look also outside, like China, Russia, you know, and so we still deal with our neighbors, we still deal with Africa, but it's no longer as it used to be.
Thank you, Ambassador Bono. Ambassador Chudi Okafor, I mean, following from what Ambassador Bono said, some international relations scholars would argue that following the complete decolonization of the African continent, it almost was inevitable that there will be a shift in the focus of Nigeria's Afrocentric foreign policy. But even on the heels of that, what is the trend that we are observing now as the critical focus of our foreign policy, and how well are we on that track?
Yes, absolutely. There are debates and arguments, but the important point there is that fundamentally from beginning, when the foreign policy options and principles were set, Africa, of course, was at the center of it. Even if you look at our 1999 Constitution, Chapter 2, Section 19, you will see there, after our national interest, the second thing there is African integration and support for African unity. So yes, in the UN in 1960, precisely October 7th, our former Prime Minister, the first Prime Minister, Balewa, set it out there what the principles and objectives are. So Africa is there and looms large, no question about it. At the same time, like you indicated, there are relations beyond Africa. That is why we have our partners and friends across the globe. But what is important there is, our national interest. So we have to deal with Africa, our neighbors, like Ambassador Bono indicated, but then we need to reach out globally to other countries where we also, as far as our national interest is involved, we do the right thing. We do deal with Europe, we deal with Asia, we deal with other countries, and also at the bilateral and multilateral levels. What is important is what is good for our national interest. So the principles are there, but it depends anyway on a particular administration, whether you want to emphasize or de-emphasize any aspect of it. But the principles basically remain the same as set out from our former Prime Minister, the first Prime Minister.
So, are you saying, Ambassador, that yes, Africa remains the centerpiece of our policy? There might be different colorations to how this is pursued, but is that really necessarily what we are seeing today? I mean, if you look back to the last 10 years?
Okay, let's put it this way. This is 21st century. There are other issues involved in the pursuit of foreign policy of this country. If you look at things like climate change, if you look at environmental regulations, if you look at drugs, diseases, things have changed. So you need collective action in order to enable you realize your national interest. There are a few things that Africa today, if you just focus on Africa, you may not be able to realize in your foreign policy. And what is important is interests of Nigerian citizens for any foreign policy approach you want to undertake. Our people are at the center. So if you say in terms of environment, you need other partners, you need other friends outside Africa. Why not? Climate change, droughts, diseases, migration, and what have you. So it's not just about Africa, but there is no way we can do without Africa in our foreign policy calculations.
Okay, well put. And of course, there were certain factors that led to Nigeria deciding to have Africa as the centerpiece of foreign policy. But now, given the fact that the world has indeed moved on, and there are developments in all facets of relations, be it economy, be it education, culture, and what have you. I want to turn to Grant Ehiobuche now. How would you evaluate Nigerians' engagements or relations, with other nations in the past 10 years?
Thank you very much for having me come. Yes, there has been a slight shift on our Afrocentrism. There have been slight shift in a concentric circle, whereby we are now looking inwards and saying Nigeria, if possible, Nigeria first, then our immediate neighbors, ECOWAS, comes next in the concentric circle, and it expands further to African Union and the rest of entire Africa. Of course, deriving from there, we still go further, go global. And by global, I mean, for instance, now we have the Africa-Japan relationship, which is looming large. We have the African-China relationship, which is quite a big body. We have the now Africa-Russia relationship, and we are aware Mr. President has just come back from Russia, where he attended this particular forum, Africa-Russia relationship, and of course there are so many derivatives from it. So with the changing trend, we still retain our global focus, but at the same time we are now shifting and looking inwards, that even if Mr. President is attending Africa-Russia forum, he's still going to focus particularly on what do we derive with our relationship with Russia. How do we strengthen Nigeria-Russia relationship? What is our benefit from this forum? Because we also belong to the World Economic Forum, which is global. And then even there, our focus is what particularly is Nigeria going to benefit.
Okay, Ambassador Ehiobuche, thanks a lot. Your association is organizing a public lecture tomorrow on this same issue of evaluating current trends in Nigeria's foreign policy and making projections with regard to prospects. Tell us some more about that lecture.
Yes, it's tomorrow, 29th, and it's going to be a big one because look at the career ambassadors who are now retired after 30, 35 years of meritorious service with skills and experiences. We think this is the time to give back to the nation because we're well trained with public fund. So the association is trying to reach out this median public lecture. We are getting foreign policy actors, beginning with Mr. President, who is the chief foreign policy person for this country. The organized private sector, top functionaries of the administration, the diplomatic corps, and the media. We expect NTA and others also to be there. So the idea is to rub minds because Ambassador Lisemeka, who is going to give the lecture, is a statesman, an icon of international repute because he has seen it all, both from the point of view of formulation of our foreign policy and execution. Former permanent secretary, former foreign minister at the UN and everywhere. He's been there, ambassador for almost 8 countries in the world. So it's going to be a very, very, very big lecture for our nation.
Okay, let's get from Ambassador Mbono. What are the expected outcomes from that lecture?
Well, the purpose is to get everybody involved. in the foreign policy, the awareness, sensitization. Let the public know. Because the truth is, they don't even know what the foreign policy is all about. As far as they're concerned, this is a ministry where the people go out to whine. It's not true. We want them to, like now, the media, everybody will be there to tell others, tell Nigerians what the foreign policy, what are the challenges? Where have we started? Where are we? Where are we going? What do we expect to achieve? And like my colleagues have rightly said, there is monumental changes. Look at our neighbors. Hitherto, what we're doing, we wouldn't have done it. Closure of the border. We need to explain to them, why do we take certain actions? You know, we have been there. I was there a few days ago on the UN Day. You know, I was telling them, Nigeria has been Father Christmas to these African countries. What have we achieved? One of the questions asked me, and I told them, I was a human rights special rapporteur on corruption. We were going for election. Do you know the country that fought us? Liberia. We just liberated Liberia, and they fought us. So we really have to tell Nigerians, what is this ministry all about? What do we do? You know, because they see maybe health or works, you can see tangibles. With Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you don't see tangibles. Are we working? And it gives us problem when we're going to defend our budget. What are these people doing? So we want you people to help us. We want Nigerians to come together. We want synergy. Like my colleague rightly said, the private sector will be there, you know, and diplomats, you know, career, because these are career ambassadors. 35 years, the experiences are there. We want the Nigeria to know what we do. We want Nigeria to come on board.
Okay, Ambassador Mano, thanks a lot. Just last one from Ambassador Grant here, Abuja.
Yes.
This is the maiden lecture that you're having as retired career ambassadors.
Yes.
And considering the breadth and scope of experience that your members have, are you thinking of a think tank arising from these lectures and interactions?
Thank you very much.
Very briefly.
It's like you're talking our mind. Definitely, the Association of Retired Career Ambassador of Nigeria is already a think tank. We have the core experience, core competence, cognate experience, everything about articulation and the conduct of Nigerian foreign policy over the years. We are the repository of the intellectual property. And we are now beginning to think that perhaps we need to codify this intellectual property before some of us pass on. In the last 2-3 weeks, 3 of the retired career ambassadors have passed on. And these are people who were heavily loaded with knowledge and specific competencies, which we did not concretize. This is an opportunity now by this median lecture, which the theme is Nigeria's foreign policy, evolution, trend, and prospects since independence, a personal perspective. And who is giving this personal perspective, like my colleague said, is one of our earliest 12 apostles.
Okay.
Ambassador Olisemeka, who had been our foreign minister and has this wide experience, served in more than 7 countries.
Yes.
He would now have to present to the world how did the foreign service come about.
All right, all right, sir. Time will not allow us to continue, but we've gotten that fact also from your colleague here, Chudi Okafor, and we expect that after the lecture, you will return here to let Nigerians know what actually transpired. On this note, I'd like
greatly appreciate.
On this note, I'd like to thank all of you for being here and, of course, sharing your thoughts on this issue. Ambassador Chudi Okafor, former Nigerian ambassador to Thailand and Burma, we thank you for being here this morning. And Ambassador Grant Abuja, former Nigerian ambassador to Congo Democratic Republic and Deputy Publicity Secretary, Association of Retired career ambassadors of Nigeria. Thanks for coming.
Okay.
Ambassador Christine Bond, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, you've thanked Ambassador Mbono already? So you've thanked her already?
No, I've not thanked her already.
Right.
I'm
So
yet to do that.
I'm
yet to do that. Ambassador Mbono, former head of Nigeria's permanent mission to Africa, South America Cooperation Forum, one of Nigeria's very few female ambassadors. It's been a pleasure hosting you this morning on this platform.
Thank you for having me.
I just might add that Ambassador Olisameka, who is delivering a lecture tomorrow, is a keen watcher of Good Morning Nigeria. If he doesn't have public power supply, he puts on his generator to watch the program 7 to 9,
All right,
Monday to Friday.
That's nice indeed. And we'll be moving to the major conversation for this one, which is on the review of Nigeria's President Buhari's visit to Russia. Stay with us. We'll come back in just a moment.
Advertising your goods and services on the right channel gives you an edge over your competitors. NTA News 24 has all the platforms for your target audience. The station is on DSTV channel 419, GoTV channel 46, StarTimes channel 101, and Free TV channel 703. With our digital format and wide range, we can reach your customers in next to no time. We are eager to promote your business, goods and services. So, partner with us for a very rewarding business experience. For more information, please call Henry on 0803-379-0884 or visit our office at NTA Headquarters, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. NTA News 24. News and more news.
One quality sound. Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
You are about to witness the commencement of the most stimulating and compelling contest on television. This contest is only for the strong, the intelligent, and the talented. Get ready for the Unity Challenge reality TV show. Coming soon.
Chief. Good morning, sir. You are here already?
No, now my spirit day, my body day for house. What kind of question is that? Were you not the one that fixed this meeting for 8 a.m.? You are now coming by 10 a.m. and start asking me job question.
But Chief, now, I'm sorry. Don't you also go late for meetings sometimes? You know now, African time.
No more African time. And no more pancaking of face during office hours. At the end of the day, we will lose valuable time. We will not make progress. If we want to move this nation forward, we must treat business as business and respect time. Change begins with me.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry. Can we go for the meeting now, Chief?
Better.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
One quality sound. Want it bigger? Want affordable? Buy Cynics. Bigger, better.
And in case you just joined us, this is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Now, our second conversation this morning is, of course, a review of President Buhari's visit to Russia. And here is Oyeyemi Ajayi with a background report to that.
The four-day Russia-Africa summit, which was described as a starting point for building fair partnerships between Russia and the African continent, signaled Russia's implementation of positive and future-oriented agenda for Africa. This is the first time such summit will be made. To the Nigerian delegation, it was a very successful outing. Deals were made across many sectors of the economy, serving the desire of the two countries to diversify and further strengthen the bonds of their robust bilateral relations. Nigeria and Russia agreed to expand cooperation in the energy sector, petroleum and gas, trade and investments, defense and security, mining and steels development, aluminium and phosphate, education and agriculture, and many other sectors. The summit gave a ray of hope as the Russians agreed to a government-to-government understanding that would see the completion of the Ajakuta steel rolling mill and commission it. A memorandum of understanding was equally signed between the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC) and Russia's Lukoil, which owns 7 refineries and a record turnover of $38 billion. Talking about education, Russia promised to give additional scholarships to Nigerians, in addition to the 797 Nigerian students to have benefited from scholarships for training in Russia in various academic fields. President Muhammadu Buhari also got a deal for the technological upgrade and timely delivery of the balance of 7 out of an existing order for 12 attack helicopters, a military hardware needed to deal with the new wave of crime bedeviling the country, especially in the fight against terrorism. The international support in tackling homegrown terrorists, the Boko Haram, with intensive cooperation in the strategic fields of defense, civil nuclear energy, and in dealing with piracy and oil pipeline vandalism in the Gulf of Guinea, were part of the regional and international issues of mutual interest that were discussed at the summit. Nigeria's aspiration to assume a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council in the envisaged reform of the United Nations was also well discussed. So far, Russian companies have expressed readiness to offer their scientific and technological developments to their African partners and share their experience of upgrading energy, transport and communications infrastructure. To many, it is believed that the summit opens a new chapter for Nigeria-Russia relations towards growth and development of the two countries.
Thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that background. We have guests with us here in the studios, as well as another guest joining us via Skype for this conversation. Let's first welcome Malam Garba Shehu, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, who was on the President's entourage to the summit. Malam Garba, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria again.
Thank you, and good morning.
Okay. Also here with us, another familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria, Ambassador Joe Keshi, former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Ambassador, pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me here again.
And then also here with us in the studios, we'd like to welcome Ambassador Clement Onoja Aduku. He, at some point in the course of his diplomatic career, served in Nigeria's mission in Moscow. Ambassador Aduku, pleasure to have you with us on the program today.
Thank you for welcoming me. Good morning.
And we equally have Professor Jidofo Adibe, of course, who is a professor of international relations at the Nasarawa State University. You're welcome, Prof.
Thank you.
And joining us via Skype from Moscow is Ambassador Steve Davis Uba, Nigeria's ambassador extraordinary and plenipotentiary to the Russian Federation with concurrent accreditation to Republic of Belarus. We understand you are just 2 hours ahead of us here, and so we can still say good morning to you and welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right, so very good and sharp Skype connection. We'll take prompt advantage of it right now.
Exactly.
Kiri, I'm not sure if it's snowing already in Moscow before we get disruption. Ambassador, of course, when you have a summit such as what took place last week, it's always a very busy time. But in the aftermath of that summit, and from Nigeria's own diplomatic perspective, what did the summit achieve?
That's for me. The summit achieved a lot. I think first and foremost, it woke up Russia to its role and obligation in the international sphere as far as Africa is concerned. We, the African ambassadors in Moscow, have been pushing for the past 18 months for recognition of Africa's role in international affairs and for Russia to play a more proactive role in engaging Africa. And this summit and economic forum was a culmination of those efforts. So I think that the greatest takeaway is the fact that Russia now recognized that it was lagging behind other powers in terms of their involvement in Africa. And for President Putin to have agreed to host this first ever Russia-Africa summit, I think it is something that was very commendable. Apart from the individual deals, individual memoranda of understanding, individual agreements that were reached with other African countries, it also gave those African countries who perhaps did not have a chance to have one-on-one or bilaterals with their counterparts to actually, in Russia, meet with their counterparts and discuss issues of the national importance to them. So I think that it was a very successful and very useful and a very significant event.
Ambassador, we are still with you on this. You recall that Nigeria has had the relations with Russia, of course, when it was USSR, and we also have had some engagements at a very high level with that country. And from your comment, it does appear that African nations rooted for this kind of conference. Are we forcing Russia to engage Africa, for instance? And what are the assurances that even after the agreement you reached, in this conference, that Russia is determined, to set its foot on Africa for the purpose of developing the continent?
If I understand you correctly, because the audio is not too good. Timing, I guess it's it, but I think there couldn't have been a better time than now for Russia to engage us. In terms of the other aspects of our engagement, particularly for Nigeria, we had lagging programs. We had the Jaukuta, we had the Military Technical Cooperation Agreement, we had ALSCON on the ground, we had the nuclear power plants on the ground that really we're not getting any traction on. But these projects are also in the interest of Russia, given where they are right now in terms of the economic situation, vis-a-vis happenings in the international arena. So for us in Nigeria, it was very crucial to reopen this conversation with Russia and get them to commit to engage in us in Nigeria on these various projects. And I'm so happy that President Putin and President Buhari were able to come together. They had a meeting of the minds, and it wasn't so difficult to sell each other on these ideas. So for me, I was very excited that our project, for instance, in Jaukuta, that has been lagging for the past 40 years, now has a chance to actually be revived. I was very happy that the ASCON issue that has been in litigation for the past 14 years now will have a chance of being resolved, so we can move forward with really developing our country the way we want it developed. So I hope I'm answering your question right, because the audio is a little bit muffled a little bit. But we took very, very seriously this engagement. We worked very hard to ensure that our president had a one-on-one with Putin, precisely for the reasons or for the outcomes that you're seeing today. The enormous...
Well, just what we feared, it's happened. Well, I'm sure our engineers will try to get that back on, and then we reconnect to Moscow. But we'll leave him, we'll put Ambassador Ugba on pause in the meantime, and then come back to our Abuja studios, where we have 4 guests. Malanga Bashir, who you were part of the president's delegation to Sochi, and then, of course, the meetings on the sidelines. Following from the question that my colleague Kirian asked, I mean, we've read the accounts of some of the takeaways, but overall, was it a question of optics, or that the Russians at this time ready and willing to get Africa as part of its geostrategic interest, and therefore be willing to walk the talk with regard to the various agreements reached in the course of the summit?
I think you got it right, because you are dealing with an entirely new world. Well, you have the scholars, you have the diplomats on the panel. From my point of view, more as a journalist, I think that it is a wake-up call for Russia and the world to the fact that, look, we are not a unipolar world, that the world is still bipolar. And there's a role for a second, leader on the global scene. Issues of UN reforms, climate change, these are all new things that really hadn't been there before. And, the ambassador, your own report had itemized quite a number of these strategic engagements between Nigeria and Russia. And it is clear that these are things that are going back to the Soviet era. And so therefore, for Russians themselves, I think that it is like, yes, they have realized that they had lost maybe a bit of their traction on the global scene from the USSR period, when they were in the forefront there, helping African countries to achieve independence, helping us to achieve industrialization. So they want to do it all over again, because, look, their opponents on the global are preaching inwardness, unilateralism. And for Nigeria, yes, we have had all of these investments, which ought to have been realized, and they're still out there, half completed, some of them. I had served as a worker in the smelter in Abasi, and you feel the pain that other countries had started plants at lesser costs and aspirations for output, and they have achieved that, Mozambique and all of that. So the thing is, there's a drive on both sides that we must just see to the realization of, some of these major investments that have brought our two nations together.
All right. Thank you. Let's turn to Ambassador Joe Keshe, who is also a man that's gathered experience over the years. When we had USSR, it was a more sophisticated enclave, but after the breakaway, we have Ukraine is gone, Azerbaijan is gone, Georgia and the rest of them, which of course contributed to what made USSR what it was then. Now we are talking about Russia, right, which is a Russian Federation without, those other components, that made them up at that time. Now, let's look at Russia and its trajectory with respect to engaging other parts of the world in terms of business. In every bilateral agreement, it's always expected to be a win-win, thing for both sides. In your understanding, where are we going with this kind of, conference that took place and all the agreements that have been reached?
Thank you very much for your question. Let me try and put this in a perspective as much as I can. To start with, what we are witnessing is a resurgence of Russia following the breakup. I think it has taken Russia quite a number of years, to get its act together. And today, the Russia that emerged from the breakup of the Soviet Union is completely different from the Russia you are seeing today. You have a more assertive, you have a more stronger and confident Russia, in the international scene. And Russia is also stepping forward as a result of the fact that these days you find that one of the strong voices who helped build the global alliance that has survived till today, it's gradually withdrawing. So a vacuum is created. When that happens, somebody has to fill in that vacuum. And that's why you now see that Russia is strong enough, confident enough, assertive enough to believe that it can join it can join Japan, it can join India, it can join China, to summon African leaders to its capital and begin to discuss, how they too can become a player. Because this continent has actually become a playfield for the big boys, for the powerful and the rich nations of the world. But I think the take for me, it's not so, some of the questions and answers sounded as if Russia is obligated to us. Russia is not obligated to us. Our archives are graveyards of memorandums and reports that have never been implemented. So what we can take away from this is that, again, we've sought assistance from Russia, but the final destination is, what do we do ourselves here to prepare to benefit from that, assistance? And as Mr. Garba, rightly pointed out, 40 years or how many years of Ajakuta, that could have become the flagship of Russian interest in this country. Because when it was conceptualized, it was put out as a hope for our industrialization. But here we are, years later, we're still going back, signing an MOU to make it work and the rest. It's not a question of how many MOUs. It's a question of, are we prepared in this country today to take the bull by the horn and ensure that when these agreements are signed, we faithfully, diligently pursue it and follow it and make sure that whatever we want to do works. If not, for another 40 years, we'll probably be back to another summit in Russia saying the same thing.
Okay, Ambassador Keshi, thanks a lot. That's a very critical point that we'll return to. Because, Mano Gaba, virtually on most of the president's trips abroad, where he's had either multilateral or bilateral engagements and MOUs have been endorsed. We've discussed all of this, and more particularly with regard to implementation. But still, on the ambience and what the outlook is on account of the first Afro-Russian summit, let's bring in Ambassador Clement Aduku. Ambassador Clement Aduku, is Russia ready for this new game of engaging with Africa, seeing what Japan, China, and India are doing already?
Yeah, thank you so much. From my own perspective and the fact that I had been on ground in Russia for upward of 4 years, then as a director of trade and investment, having several meetings and interactions with the business community in Russia, I can say to a very large extent that Russia is very, very and fully prepared now to venture outside the so-called CIS states, which means the Commonwealth of Independent States. And which are these Commonwealth of Independent States? These are small countries that came as splinters when the Soviet Union broke up in 1991. So hitherto, Russia has concentrated on how to manage relations with these other countries, trying to build a custom union, trying to build some other, partnerships. But then they have found out that they are lagging behind. So many other countries are moving faster. So there can't be any better time now for Russia to venture outside the Russian Federation and the enclave of the Commonwealth of Independent States than now, especially with a country like Nigeria with a very robust economy, very, very, sophisticated diplomatic moves to get across like any other developing countries doing in the world. So having interacted extensively within the period of 4 years when I was there with them and knowing fully well the Russian mindset, I think they are very, very prepared to do business with Nigeria on a win-win situation.
Okay.
No, sorry, Kira.
Yeah.
Other than the win-win situation, what are the other features of the Russian mindset at this time?
Yeah. One is that they want also to compete, like my former permanent secretary said, want also to compete favorably on the international scene. Russia no longer wants to be left behind. They want also to compete. We have seen their actions and activities all over the place in northern Syria and so on. Down here, even in Central African Republic, Russia is fully and strongly on ground in that place. So the incursion they are making into the African continent did not just start now. They had started earlier on, approaching these other countries until now they came and confronted the big one, which is the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
So there seems to be a new philosophy of Russia expansionism.
That is true.
Especially in Africa.
Venturing out of,
all right, let's bring
that would be a Western scholar's perspective.
Let's bring in Professor Jidof Adibe here. If you can come from academic perspective, that's no problem. Let's do a study of Russia of yesterday and that of today with respect to their expansionism mechanisms that are putting across globally now to be recognized. Professor Adibe made a point here. Mr. Adibe made a point here. Sorry, Ambassador Keshi made a point here that Russia of today is totally different from what we had, when it was under USSR. And we want to know further as to what has actually, happened since the Russia of today came to be, and how it has been able to expand its tentacles elsewhere other than Africa. The African one is just about to start. What is the record, of Russia's activities elsewhere before now, and how this engagement, will, of course, foster good relations between Africa and Russia?
Yeah, thank you very much. Basically, under Boris Yeltsin, about 9 embassies in Africa were closed down. From the time of Putin, it's actually not something that started today. From about 1999, Putin has been trying to reassert Russian power. And I'm also not very sure it is correct for us to say that Russia is just trying to come into Africa. If you go to Zimbabwe, in fact, in Central African Republic, the National Security Advisor is Russian. If you go to Sudan, it has very strong presence. In fact, Russia is today the largest military exporter of military hardware to Africa. So it has always been there, except that it's just getting caught on into this wave of Africa Summit. Remember, it was only under Obama we had Africa-US Summit. It used to be a China-Africa Summit, which was maybe in its 4th phase. So the fact that we had this Africa-Russia Summit does not mean in any way that it's the first time you're getting engaged. In fact, in 2009, the Russian president, Dmitry Medvedev, became the first Russian president to come to Nigeria, and there was the Abuja Accord. So we should also start asking questions what became of the accord. And one of my concerns, actually, rather than asking about what we are going to get, what's going to happen because we've had Africa-Russia Summit, is to ask what is likely to be America's response. In international relations, we have what we call Truman Doctrine. This was a speech by Harry Truman, who was the president in 1947, and which started what we call the Cold War, where it said it had to make provisions for Greece. $400 million was quickly, allocated to Greece and to Turkey to combat expansionism of Russia. So by the following year, they came up with that idea that anywhere you have Russia or the then Soviet Union, America was obliged to contain it. So what we are going to see now is that we say now that anywhere you see Russia moving in, America's interest is awakened. So now that Russia has organized Africa-Russia Summit, for us, the question is, how does America respond? Because it's what it's trying to do is a challenge to the Euro-Atlantic security order. And how does America respond? Don't forget that America has snubbed Africans. They had what was supposed to be Donald Trump's African initiative, which they call Resource Africa. In Mozambique, is a Resource Africa in Mozambique in June. Trump did not even send any cabinet rank minister. So that was Africa. 11 African heads of states were there. Now that Russia suddenly organized this summit, and people are reporting about it, my own people, especially in the academic world, are looking at how does America respond. Is America going to open up? In 2014, when they were dilly-dallying about selling weapons, Nigeria rushed to Russia. That was when we got the deal for helicopter. And I can tell you from Eritrea, from Egypt, from several African countries, they've moved to Russia. Even in mineral extraction in Democratic Republic of Congo, you find out that Russia is actively involved in the extraction of coltan and other resources. So it's not quite right, in my own opinion, to start thinking that Russia is simply coming in now, because it's always been there. You can actually argue that under Putin, Russia is driven by three main interests, where it wants to project its power. Two, it also wants to get, even though it has a lot of minerals, it's also interested in getting mineral resources. And it might interest you that one of its imports from Africa are fruits, especially fruits and vegetables. And then it also wants, of course, to use its, to create a new streams using companies like Lukoil and Gazprom, to create a new stream of energy resources from Africa, which will give it stronger foothold in those countries. So Russia has always been there.
Professor Adibe,
can I just interject so that we don't lose this?
That's the question I was actually going to ask, but proceed, yes.
About the American interest.
Actually, I would say EU-American response.
No, Prof, let me assure you that
Euro-Atlantic security order, that's what I call Euro-Atlantic security.
Prof, the academics shouldn't waste their time bothering about how the Americans will react. The biggest American interest in this continent is Egypt. Egypt helped organize this conference, by the way. When it was being conceptualized, it was initially supposed to be in Egypt. I don't know when they shifted it to, But the point I'm trying to make is that in the last 4 or so years, there's been no serious American interest in Africa. Donald Trump is not interested in this continent, and there's no clearly defined African policy from the Americans, So if we sit down and begin to wait and say, look, what will the Americans do or think about, because we've started a relationship with the Russians? No. We've always had relationship, as you quite rightly said, we've always had relationship with the Russians over the years, whether as Soviet Union. And you rightly said they are in a number of African countries doing one thing or the other. But the point still remains that we should not begin to think of what will be the American reaction, for the simple reason that America do not have serious interest in this continent as of today.
I think the best worry is that America will have so many aids to Africa coming from America.
We have to be careful. I just maybe Adibe would like to respond to this.
Yes.
Does Adibe's proposition not elaborate on the point you made earlier, Ambassador Keshi, that we should worry about implementation? To say, because you can have all kinds of mechanisms for destabilizing your implementation. Malagaba Shehu worked at Ascon Aluminium Smelter Company many years ago, frustrated. Ajaokuta, frustrated. On Good Morning Nigeria a couple of years ago, there were 2 guests, insiders on this program, who indicated how one, if not the 2 Bretton Woods institutions, frustrated Ajaokuta. So, America may have no obvious interests, but they could use a wide variety of institutions through what they have also confessed to be economic hitmen.
Let me look at this. When I say worry, it doesn't necessarily have to be negative. It might also actually animate them to take more interest. They're already competing with China. And don't forget, they still remain, in terms of trade relationship, while China has overtaken them 200 billion in 2018, they are still 61. Russia is only 21 billion of trade. So what we are trying to say is that it could actually work in everyone's interest. Donald Trump has been criticized actually for not even sending somebody of cabinet rank to the meeting in Mozambique. So who knows, competing with China and just what Russia has been able to demonstrate its strength in the Middle East, and now it's going to play out here. It may actually force America to loosen up, because it's not like in a bipolar world as Shehu was trying to say. It's just that you are now competing with China. You're also competing with Russia that is, interested, has always been interested. Of course, we have worries. There's always been this idea that Russia props up dictators when it goes, whereas China might be, take no interest at all. So there are concerns and there are, possibilities of gains.
Well, gentlemen, let's leave the issue of America's reaction now, because Trump has told the world that this time around it's America first, right? It's America first before any other thing. But my consideration is even on the fact that there are institutions, global institutions, that are virtually managed by America. If you ask me, IMF, World Bank, and what have you, they could use it, but we're not praying for that. But it's a possibility. So I'm not at the best. Fear is appreciated. At this point, let's return to Ambassador Steve Davis Uba in Moscow. Ambassador, you have listened to other guests. In fact, they raised a number of pertinent issues bordering on various aspects of relationship with Russia, America, and what have you. Please, let's have your own line of thought to this. You are in Moscow. You know them. You see them every day. You deal with them. So let's hear from you.
Yeah, let me start with one of the issues about the history of Russia and Nigeria and Africa. Russia, first with the USSR, has a very long, productive, positive relationship with Africa, and in particular Nigeria. Without USSR, Nigeria probably would not have been a country that we know as it exists today. But with their active support and intervention in our own fight to keep Nigeria one, Russia, USSR, and now by extension Russia, helped Nigeria in no small way in keeping us together. Now, like one of the panelists said, we have projects that Russia initiated, of course, in partnership with us. For instance, the Ajaokuta thing that everybody has been drumming up, up and down, has lagged for 40 years. Perhaps there were issues with it. My primary aim is to make sure that that project comes back, is revived, and is completed. You asked about whether or not Russia's engagement or Russia's organizing of this Africa summit is merely for optics. No, it is not just merely optics. There are deep-seated feelings about Africa in Russia, even though their attention had been diverted to dealing with European issues, to dealing with their issues with the West, and courting relationship with Asian countries. However, for those of us who were on the ground and who attended lots and lots of fora where issues were discussed that had little or nothing to do with Africa, we made sure that we reminded them that Africa still exists. They had their own priorities at the time, but through persistent reminders, they now decided, yes, Africa, we need to go back and revisit Africa. So it's not just a matter of optics, it is a deep-seated belief that, yes, indeed, they need to engage Africa. You're talking about 1.2 billion people. For Nigeria to be the third most populous country in the world by the year 2050 is not a joke. And they are very mindful of that. So it's a huge market, huge potential, and they also are following what China is doing. They're following what the United States is doing. They're following what the other Western majors are doing. And they have felt now that they needed to come back into Africa. What is the mindset of Russia? The mindset of Russia is no different from the mindset of Nigerians towards Russia. Their mindset towards Nigeria, of course, is dictated mainly by the experiences they've had in trying to establish partnerships, business partnerships with Nigeria. And I can tell you that Jakarta was a very sore point on the Russian mind. We felt it also, and we're now trying to rebuild confidence in the Russian mindset to engage Nigeria actively. And this is something that we've been working on for the past 18 months. Actively trying to get them, don't think about the past, let's think about the future. And President Buhari said that even best, okay? The way that he positioned his presentation, the way he positioned everything was not to look back necessarily, but to look at the future, while reminding Russians of the critical role they played in our own stability, and to build on that. So the mindset of the Russians is the same as the mindset of the Nigerians. We are both mutually suspicious of each other. That is the truth. And we are trying to get Nigeria to be less skeptical about Russia and Russia to be less skeptical about Nigeria. And the president's visit really broke that logjam in terms of restoring confidence. We now have more confidence in moving in Russia to advocate for Nigeria than we did before because of the president's visit. Is Russia prepared to engage Nigeria? Absolutely yes. Russia is prepared to engage Nigeria. The one thing they don't have is information, which we are working on. How to enter Nigeria, how to enter Nigeria's business environment has become a challenge for Russians. And that is what we're also actively working on, to ensure that we create a path and the ease of doing business. The World Bank report on the ease of doing business that now moved Nigeria a few steps up is a positive sign. And these are things that they monitor. These are indices that they monitor. Now, are we to be worried about America's response now that Russia has taken the initiative to organize the first Russia-Africa summit? Perhaps we should be worried. But I think that our worry should be much more positive worry than negative worry, because there is value in the West courting us, knowing that Russia has also now decided to take an active interest in Africa and particularly Nigeria for us. For me, I'm being very, very selfish. The fact that my president went and had a one-on-one meeting with President Putin and was able to agree on a few fundamentals, to me, was very, very positive. So whether the United States or any of the Western powers decides that they're going to respond negatively to Nigeria because of our strong presence in Sochi or not, to me, I think that the West needs to wake up to its obligation to Nigeria. The West needs to wake up to its obligation to Africa. And if Russia provides them with that reason to wake up and take Africa seriously as the new frontier, so be it. We have to protect our own interest. We're not going to be apologizing for our own strategic moves. And I think that this first Russia-Africa Business Summit is a fantastic strategic move that will, in the long run, benefit both Africa and Nigeria. So I have nothing but, kudos.
All right, Ambassador Uba, thank you very much there. We'll come back to you and take your closing comments on this conversation. But just to indicate that we have a torrent of tweets that have come in from viewers. We'll quickly go through those tweets now. Kirian, Dele Jack Solomon. The MOU between Nigeria and Russia would see to the resuscitation and completion of a Jakarta complex. It's a welcome development. This is what Nigerians have been yearning for. We also hope that both countries will work on this.
All right, from Festus Akimboewa, PMB's visit to Russia was a huge success. We can now effectively equip our military with Russian military equipment. Russia has also agreed to help us to complete all abandoned projects, including our Jakarta rolling mill, but the proof of the pudding is in the eating.
Abbas Abubakar Saad, President Buhari's visit is of great benefit to Nigeria because it touched on critical issues, and both countries have agreed to expand cooperation in energy, petroleum, mining, security, among others. Therefore, it's a win-win for both.
All right, from Mike Anyako, we sincerely wish that PMB's visit to Russia would bring succor to Ajaokuta steel industry. The project presently is in comatose and was being handled by Russians from beginning. The same story goes to the aluminium project at Ikotabasi that was abandoned and was being handled by a Russian company. The revitalization of these industries will go a long way in Nigeria's technological advancement, creation of jobs and huge earnings to government. The visit also would increase trade and investment between the two countries and other bilateral mutual relations.
Titus Monday Knock. I'm enthusiastic about the deal on nuclear energy. For Nigeria to be nuclear dependent, we definitely have to go. For Nigeria to be energy sufficient, we definitely have to go nuclear. Babangida always said it, and thank God Buhari is doing the same now. I'm also keen on the Russian attack helicopters that will be delivered to fight insurgency.
All right, Law Alpha C. President Buhari's visit to Russia presented another opportunity whereby he sought international assistance towards solving the myriads of security challenges bedeviling Nigeria. I have been expecting that President Buhari will use such a forum to declare a state of emergency on the power sector as the energy consumption is increasing by the day in Nigeria.
Now, Ishaq Abdullahi, when are the attack helicopters going to be delivered? Is the Russian government also going to provide technical support for our troops in the counter-insurgency operation?
All right, Badu Emma, one of the gains of Mr. President's visit to Russia is nuclear technology to address the issue of power. But to my understanding, this MOU has been signed with Russia since 2006 by the then Obasanjo administration with a company called Rustam. Hope this one will go through.
Amusu tweets, now bringing investors to come and open factories will benefit Nigeria and other African countries by helping to reduce unemployment.
But Amusu Haruna Adamu, in line with the takeaway itemized, it is a welcome development, but what matters most is the utilization of the commitment of the shuttle diplomacy to a success and to be fed by the downtrodden masses, as it is a recurrent decimal that the execution of relations is a problem.
Now, flat sheets and other iron rods used in Nigeria are brought in from Russia at exorbitant prices, but this deal will remove us from that disadvantage. The resuscitation of Ajaokuta still will create millions of direct and indirect jobs to Nigeria.
Festus Akimbewa, the agreement signed with Russia to help put our refineries back to work and improve our fertilizer production will be beneficial for our economy. Government must ensure the agreements are well implemented.
Comrade Ngala, President Buhari's visit to Russia is a good development. Our country will gain a lot, especially in tackling insecurity and construction of rail lines. Those are the tweets that we have in the meantime, Kirian. And just as well, Malangaba show, I mean, there's a lot of applause for the president, that's Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari, on account of the visit, and all of that has also been highlighted in the course of this conversation. But here is one point, sticky one for that matter, which has to do with implementation. You can count, the number of agreements the Nigerian government has signed with either bilaterally or multilaterally for the benefit of our people. Some persons would look at the Sochi summit and say, okay, fine, the Russians want to come in terms of railways, that's to say Lagos-Calabar rail line, they want to come in refineries, more importantly Ajaokuta, and also Ascon being the aluminum smelting company, 4 of them. What goes on in government? I mean, Ambassador Keshi can also take on this. What goes on in government in terms of having a repository of these agreements and continually drawing attention to its provisions so that appropriate ministries, departments and units take up their responsibilities arising from those agreements? Those agreements will not implement themselves.
I think the most important thing that will drive all of these things is the will on the part of the leader to see these things through. And permit me to just slightly go back to Adibe's issue. And I want to say that Adibe is thinking positively, but I have read a number of posts on Twitter, Facebook by fellow Nigerians screaming that the next day after President Buhari's return, American ambassador will call, and then you're in trouble. I think that we need to understand, as all of these people have said, including the ambassador, we have had a long-standing relationship with Russians. It's been there. Nothing is new, including the procurement of these attack helicopters. It's an ongoing, yes, it has been slowed down. And I recall that at the point when this matter had come up, while we were still in Russia, one or two of my colleagues were saying, should we project it? Americans, wouldn't they get angry? And all of that. Before you know it, the Russians themselves had put it out on the wire, which is to say that they too, they are driven by the passion. They want to do these things. And presented with the question, at a meeting, President Buhari was asked whether there would be no implications coming from our traditional partners and all of that. Well, and his view was that, well, I've been around for so long. Don't forget that he had been a military head of state. He has seen the world. He's been around for so long. And he says, look, it's the national interest that we should pursue. If it is in the interest of our nation, whatever consequences, so be it. So now the thing then is, would they deliver? Would the Russians do as they are saying? And I'm saying that from my understanding, the Russians themselves are putting in place a new business model, which the Chinese have deployed. You know, the Europeans, Americans, and all, we have said it elsewhere. When they give you a project, they will say, okay, this is your way to the bank. Go and talk to them and see how you can get money to this. And so again, that justifies the fears of the Bretton Woods institution, whether they punish us by withholding this and that. No, the indication clearly is that there is a project here, there's financing here. In most cases, they will go together. And this is what the Chinese have done, and this is why we're able to deliver on railways, on bridges, on a lot of power projects in the country. I do believe sincerely that we will not fail on this Russian agreements as well.
And Kingsley, I'm just thinking in this direction. We have been talking about assistance from Russia in railways, refinery, agriculture, nuclear power for peaceful purposes. That's for, of course, power generation and what have you. And I have not heard the issue of transfer of technology. I have not heard assistance for homegrown technology, because virtually what we're expecting from Russia are all technologically driven, 100% plus. Now, and again, what are we bringing to the table as a nation? What are the sources of the financing? Who is financing what? Is it Nigeria or Russia? To what extent will this assistance help to change the course of history of Nigeria with respect to infrastructure and other sectors of national development? Let me bring in Ambassador Onoja Aduku here.
Thank you very much. It is very important also to match the issue of funding with the projects that have been conceptualized. I know there's no free lunch anywhere in the world, like the Americans will say. It is not just enough to invest money into a project. It is equally important to ensure that the money invested into any given project or program, policies of government, are all followed to its conclusive end, to make sure that at the end of it all, there's value for money. I am also very confident that you need to live in Russia to know the enormity of wealth in that country. It was only when I got to Russia I got to know and realize that Russia has the largest oil and gas deposits and reserves in the whole world, over and above Saudi Arabia and other Middle Eastern countries. But the noise is not made. They don't advertise what they have. And like I said, it takes two like minds to work well. Our president, as determined as he is to take Nigeria to the next level, and President Putin trying to get Russia to compete favorably on the global stage. Russia, by my own assessment and calculation, is very, very, very prepared to put in as much resources as possible, because the Russians don't always like to fail out from any venture or engagement they engage in, because there's always this feeling that, the technology is obsolete, the people are not forthcoming. It's like what China did to come out strong and become the second largest economy in the world. Russians, if they should show what they have, everybody will marvel, including the United States of America.
Are we expecting grants and aid or equity participation in all of this? I mean, let's face it, if it's a new business model, such as Mala Garba has indicated, and we're expecting to build our railway from Calabar to Lagos, build refineries, complete our Jakarta, equity stake will be very valuable. But Ambassador Keshi, now this is all on paper. How do you move it from paperwork to reality so that Jakarta functions? The refineries get to work, our refineries, new ones, we see them, we see new rail lines, and we see ASCON functioning. What can we do to avoid the lethargy of implementation?
There seems to be an air of optimism in the air, and I think I'd like to join everybody to be optimistic. I was a permanent secretary when the last Russian president visited this country. I think 2009. You know, we actually forced him to come because he was going around Africa and decided he was going to stop by. I actually told the ambassador was crying in my office that no, he will not stop in this country if he doesn't spend a night, if he doesn't spend a day. You cannot go around, spend 2 days, and you not cross over Nigeria. And I said, no way. It just shows you, in answer to your question, that the Russians might be changing today. They want to play the big boy in the field. But the reality still remains that we need not just to be careful, not just to be attentive, but to, again, I say this often and often, reorganize ourselves and decide on, because the success of all this depends on what we are prepared to do, what we are prepared to bring to the table as well. I wish government has actually prioritized what he wants to do and focus on Ajaokuta and get it working. I do not, he probably will correct me, I don't know the Russians to be great in railway matter. They might have internal railway, but they are not on the list of of top countries when it comes to, rail transportation and the rest of it, and the rest. But here's my final take on this. It's good we are reaching out to the Russians, but let's not think that the Russians are obligated to help us. If we want to make it a win-win situation, we must go to the table with what we have. And that was what was done a few years ago when the Ajaokuta, still was being conceptualized. We put in money on the table. Quite a number of Nigerian students were sent abroad, to learn the act of, so that when the steel is in place, they could also become officers or, steel producers and the rest, We still need to begin to think about that and say to ourselves, the actualization of all these things will depend on what we do in this country. Look, I'm not talking about this conspiracy theory, the Western will stop us and so on. If they come to you as a leader and you say, no, this is in my national interest, it must go on, it will go on. That's the simple truth.
Just before we round off, from what Ambassador Keshi said, we would like Ambassador Uba to react. What are we bringing to the table? Because we know that part of the reason why Ajaokuta failed was because we didn't play our own card well. Nigeria did not play its own card well, and that was part of the reason Ajaokuta failed. So what are we bringing to the table presently? Please, just in a minute.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me touch on a few issues, including Ajaokuta, the implementation of all the projects that we have agreed we will pursue together with Russia. It is not enough to simply say we're going to pursue these projects. We have to have a mechanism in place that will fund these projects. I think the number one bottleneck in all these projects that we're talking about, particularly in the present Buhari administration, is funding. And anytime we are discussing a project, the first thing on the table is how are we going to fund these projects? Because it's more than just talking about it, it is about implementing it. And we also at home have to have the will to implement these projects. We have the resources. We have the know-how in terms of structuring the deals to make these projects happen. So where is the will? And the president is so focused on making sure that these projects, come on stream, that I think that the chances of failure compared to the past are very, very slim. That's number one. Number two, in terms of transfer of technology that we were talking about, Russia has trained thousands and thousands of our engineers. And in all of my conversations with them, we always end up with them establishing a training facility in Nigeria, even if it's a question of even automobiles or cars or trucks. They don't simply want to sell us trucks. They want to be able to establish assembly plants in Nigeria. If it's a matter of selling us helicopters, they don't want to simply just sell us helicopters and have us fly helicopters to Russia for servicing. They want to also set up servicing facilities in Nigeria. Ambassador Keshi talked about not knowing whether or not Russia has a competitive advantage in terms of railway system. Russia occupies a landmass with 17 million square kilometers connected by railway system. They are the number one country in terms of railway technology. They help China, they help India, they help all these other countries, you see. And we are trying to leverage on that in terms of our own railway system. China has capacity, India has capacity, so does Russia. Just moving from Moscow to Sochi by rail takes 24 hours. By rail, 24 hours, you see. And they have established railway universities, which they are also prepared to establish in Nigeria. So it's a win-win situation for us. Our association with Russia is in our own interest as well as the Russian interest. Just like one of my colleagues said, there's no free lunch anywhere. We have to.
Well, I'm sorry. We have to end this conversation. Ambassador Steve Davis Ugba, who's Nigeria's ambassador, extraordinary and plenipotentiary to the Russian Federation with concurrent accreditation to the Republic of Belarus. We'd like to thank you for your comments. But by the way, you said the Russians are willing to establish transportation university. Here we have two already that are supposed to be established in Nigeria. So I don't think the controversies around those ones have not yet been resolved. Let's not compound it yet. If they want to build rail line, let them build it from Lagos to Calabar. So thank you very much, Ambassador. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day in Moscow. Also here with us, appreciation to Ambassador Clement Onoja Aduku, who was a diplomat in Moscow sometime in his career. Thanks a lot for being with us. Ambassador Joe Keshi, former Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, thanks always for your insight. Thank you. Professor Jideofor Adibe, Professor of International Relations and Political Science, Nasarawa State University, Kefi, thanks a lot for your contribution. Last but not the least, Malangaba Shehu, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity. Thanks a lot for being with us and Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you very much. All right, so that does it for our conversation segment on Good Morning Nigeria today. We thank you for tuning in. We are back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kirian. It's always a pleasure to have you.